So, William and Catherine have left Windsor. And the reason underneath that sentence is the strangest thing I have gone through in a long time. There is no feud in this one. No leaked messages. No public freeze-outs on palace steps. None of the familiar machinery of royal drama is grinding here. This one unsettles for a quieter, colder reason. It is the sort of account that makes you lie awake later, listening to the ordinary creaks of your own home and wondering what sits beneath the floorboards. It began with routine work. A structural survey at Adelaide Cottage, the understated house on the Windsor estate that the couple selected so their 3 children could experience grass underfoot, proper doors, and something resembling a regular childhood. Engineers arrived with instruments and notes to examine the foundations of an aging property. 17 minutes into the job, the evening ceased to be ordinary. Beneath the cottage stretched a lattice of passages older than the building itself. Sections traced back to the English Civil War. Prior surveys had overlooked them entirely. Security checks had missed them. Official files covering decades of the property's history contained no reference whatsoever. Alone, the tunnels would have meant maintenance headaches and administrative forms. What forced the family out at midnight was the evidence discovered inside those passages. I will delay the full weight of that find for a short while. Hand it over too soon and it risks becoming merely an eerie footnote. Stay with the account and you will experience it as the household experienced it. My name is Harold. I work through the filings, the buried records, the half-finished inquiries that surround this family. What follows is the pattern I have assembled from those pieces. If this kind of reconstruction interests you, stay until the close. The final stretch is where the whole matter settles. The sequence opens on a Tuesday near the end of November, around a quarter before midnight. William and Catherine had retired roughly 3 hours earlier. George, Charlotte, and Louis slept. Infrared sensors embedded in the walls of Adelaide Cottage registered movement in a location where none should occur. William woke first. Military years had altered his sleep patterns. The faint shift in air pressure as protection officers moved through the lower halls was enough to bring him fully alert. Catherine woke moments later, as mothers do. Neither spoke. Adults who have spent their entire grown lives under observation learn that the first minute of trouble rewards listening more than questions. The knock was soft and persistent. William crossed the room in 4 strides and opened the door on Marcus Headley, chief of their personal protection detail, already wearing the expression that carried the news before any words left his mouth. 3 additional officers held positions in the corridor behind him. No one intended to send the family back to sleep with empty assurances. Headley reported that the structural team had uncovered signs of recent human presence in the voids under the house. Not relics of a century past. Not half a century past. Recent and repeated. Tools free of rust. Footprints pressed into dust that had not yet resettled. Empty water bottles bearing purchase dates from the month before. A clean folding chair. A thermal blanket. And photographs. Images of the Wales family moving through ordinary days, captured from angles that proved the photographer understood their daily timetable. Someone had occupied the space beneath that house while the family slept above it, and the occupation had continued for some time. Headley delivered the essence in 5 words. Those close to the corridor say William repeated them to his wife without alteration. They were under the house. Not outside the gates. Not across the wall. Not among the trees with a long lens of the sort every previous pursuer had used. Under the floor of the room where his children rested. Hold that image. You now know what lay in the dirt. You do not yet know who placed it there, nor how long the presence had lasted. The second answer is the one that tempted Windsor, and I will deliver it before the close. Catherine was already moving toward the children's bedrooms before Headley finished speaking. That detail remains with me. She did not wait for further explanation. She asked no clarifying questions. The instant she grasped that the issue concerned her children's safety, she was in the hallway. George, Charlotte, and Louis had to be woken with care, dressed quickly, and transferred to a secure location while investigators measured the scale of what rested beneath their beds. Catherine's public manner is built on composure. In that corridor, the composure slipped by a narrow margin, revealing the woman who filters every choice through a single lens, the welfare of those 3 children. William remained in the doorway watching her move from bed to bed. Her voice stayed low and steady while she told 3 bewildered children they were embarking on a midnight adventure. George, 11, already understands that his family carries complications unknown to other households. Charlotte, 9 and sharper than most observers realize, asked the question that sliced through the story her mother was constructing. Are we safe here, Mum? Catherine hesitated half a second. No longer. William saw it from the doorway and recognized exactly what that pause cost her. The evacuation proceeded without complication. Protection units rehearse such scenarios constantly and hope never to enact them. William carried Louis down the stairs, the 6-year-old still half asleep against his shoulder. Catherine followed with a hand on each of the older children. Staff had already retrieved the essential bags from lists revised 4 times a year and stored where no one needs to search for them after midnight, a quiet indicator of the preparation that underlies the family's everyday existence. 3 vehicles waited on the drive, engines running, routes pre-agreed. The image that returns to me is this: a woman standing on her own gravel in the November chill, coat thrown over nightclothes, one of her son's shoes in her hand because it had slipped off on the stairs, smiling down at 3 frightened children so they would not panic. Armed men with earpieces ringed her in the dark. The Princess of Wales on her own doorstep being escorted from her own home by strangers carrying torches. She turned once more before entering the car. That house had been a deliberate choice. She and William selected Adelaide Cottage over more imposing options so the children could have gardens rather than galleries, bedrooms rather than exhibits. They relocated the family there in 2022, and the British press framed it as the couple purchasing a slightly more ordinary childhood for their sons and daughter. Now the house stood behind her in darkness, its windows still warm, transformed into something unrecognizable. William's hand found hers. "I keep returning to the man carrying the 6-year-old down those stairs." Another woman in this narrative once carried 2 small boys through the night. Diana did so to extract her sons from a palace and give them an hour in the ordinary world. A burger restaurant, an unmarked car, any place the institution could not reach. Her son was carrying his own child through the dark for the opposite reason. Same sensation of stairs, same 2 arms, and the institution had found him regardless. The convoy departed at 43 minutes past midnight, leaving a property already becoming 3 things simultaneously: a crime scene, an archaeological site, and a security failure that would require explanation to the king, to the government, and eventually, in carefully smoothed form, to the public. By first light, white forensic tents stood across the lawns of Adelaide Cottage, each positioned over an entrance to the network below. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Wright received the call at midnight. Her experience with historical property offences and a clearance level permitting work within the unusual protocols surrounding the family brought her to the site. Her team deployed ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging. For those unfamiliar, the radar allows surveyors to detect voids beneath solid ground without excavation. It is the reason the entire matter unraveled in one night rather than over years. The resulting map exceeded every expectation. The passages did not terminate at Adelaide Cottage. They continued, linking to Windsor Castle itself and to 4 additional properties on the estate, among them Frogmore Cottage and Royal Lodge. Pause on that fact. 4 years, perhaps far longer, a route existed across the Windsor estate that passed beneath every gate, every checkpoint, every camera, and every system designed by people whose careers center on preventing access to the royal family. No one on the payroll knew of its existence. The tunnels themselves presented a solvable problem. Ancient stone attacks no one. Seal the openings, restrict knowledge of the remainder, close the file. What elevated the matter from infrastructure inconvenience to national security concern was the proof that someone had used the passages repeatedly and recently. In one chamber, located directly under the room where Prince Louis slept 20 feet above, investigators discovered a makeshift camp. A chair, a blanket, sufficient water for an extended stay. Additional photographs. Not historical images. Recent pictures of the family living ordinary days. The selection revealed the photographer's priorities. The school run, Catherine's morning route across the estate, the brief daily window when protection shifts change and the grounds grow quieter than at any other hour. No one stumbles into that pattern by chance. That is deliberate study. I place one fact beside another because discussion of this family and photography cannot avoid it. William has spent his whole life being photographed by men whose faces he never saw. At 15, in September 1997, he walked in a dark suit behind his mother's coffin through central London while the world recorded the moment. He learned before he could drive that a camera directed at his family is never neutral. 28 years later, a man lay in the earth beneath his son's bedroom, lens in hand, learning the hours when observation was thinnest. William received hourly updates throughout the first day. He and Catherine had brought the children to Kensington Palace, and neither missed the irony. The entire purpose of Windsor had been to move the children out of a palace and into a house. They sat in the former apartment and attempted to explain to 3 pairs of questioning eyes why return was not yet possible. The inquiry advanced at the accelerated pace reserved for anything involving that family, yet simultaneously progressed slowly because much of what emerged from the ground carried historical significance. Every item required photography, logging and dual assessment, once for counter-terrorism value, once for archival importance. Dr. Helena Ashworth of the Royal Collection Trust found herself working alongside counter-terrorism officers. Her knowledge of Tudor and Stuart construction proved the most valuable resource inside the tents, for she alone could account for how the passages had remained absent from every modern plan. By mid-afternoon, a provisional picture emerged. The network predates Adelaide Cottage by a considerable margin, at least the 17th century and likely earlier. Portions display were consistent with the Second World War, when Windsor was fortified against a German invasion that never materialized and two young princesses spent the Blitz within those walls. In the decades that followed, knowledge of the passages vanished, not destroyed, but misfiled, boxed, shelved under incorrect headings, forgotten by the last person with cause to consult them. Royal property archives are vast. No one has ever completed a full reading. By evening, the question occupying every officer in those tents was the same question Charlotte had asked her mother in the dark. Someone had rediscovered the tunnels. Someone had taken the trouble to transport equipment below and remain. That person possessed a motive. Until investigators obtained a name, the motive remained unknown. King Charles received his briefing at Clarence House. Before staff, he kept his expression neutral. On the subsequent telephone call with his son, sources indicate he made no such effort. The reaction is understandable. Charles has lived through the entire catalogue of intrusions. In 1982, a man named Michael Fagan entered Buckingham Palace, reached the Queen's bedroom, and sat on the end of her bed while she conversed with him and waited for assistance. That episode remains public record and has shaped royal security planning for 4 decades. More recently, a man named Jaswant Singh Chahal entered the grounds of Windsor Castle on Christmas Day 2021 carrying a crossbow. The Old Bailey sentenced him in October 2023. Both men arrived over the wall. Every subsequent defensive measure has been designed around approaches from above ground. This intrusion came from below, and that is why the king's voice altered.